We want you to bring that here, all right? Go out there and press them and choke them out.
Good afternoon, Jets fans. Appreciate everybody tuning in. I know I was muted there in the intro, but I'm here. Last week, we broke down every position, every player on the offensive side of the ball for the 2025 Jets. This week, we have to continue the summer ranking series. We're going to discuss defense and special teams. We're going to lump them together in this episode. We're going to go over defensive line, linebackers, corners, safeties, and the entire special teams unit. Really excited to get into this one. Like I said, as we continue our summer ranking series, and this is going to culminate in a baseline grading system for my top 53 rankings, which will come out closer to preseason. I'm not going to go ahead and guess my top 53 just yet. We want to see some football played right before we really get into the analysis of the top 53 on the roster. Just want to shout out a couple guys in the chat here. Chris B, Indy Jets, Atlantic Flight Podcast. You guys are awesome for tuning in so quickly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. I have the same kind of breakdown I did from last week, but first we'll show last week's real quick for those who weren't here. I'm popping it up on the screen now. As you can see, everything is color coordinated. Everybody gets a bucket between grades 1 through 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, which is, to me, an all-pro or Pro Bowl caliber player. A 1 is your unknown or your developmental player only. And then a lot of guys kind of find themselves in the middle. We have mostly good at the 4 tier. We have the 3 tier, which is just good or average. And then 2 is your below average and rookies. So I'll give everybody a second to look at the offense before we switch over to the defense. And we're going to do it the exact same way. All right, I have it here. And as you can see right off the top, a lot more blue on the defensive side of the ball, right? Only Garrett Wilson was the only blue 5-tier player, in my opinion, in the offensive side of the ball. So really excited to get into the defensive side where I think the strength of this team is and quite frankly has been for the last couple seasons, right? So we'll get into the largest group first. This is the highest by volume. Maybe not necessarily by skill level or talent level, but in my opinion, the D-line is where everything's going to start. I know Robert Saleh said we go as they go with the defensive line, and I still think that's going to be the case to a degree, but I think there's another position group also that's going to jump in there and be the catalyst for success on the defensive side of the ball. As you can see, I have 4 names in the tiers 5 through 3. I have 7 players in the below average tier, and then I have about 6 guys who are unknown or developmental players on the defensive line. From top down, you have Quinnen Williams. He is the 5 tier. This is a guy, he's going to be a Pro Bowl, all-pro player at least once more in his career, in my opinion. He's still only 27 years old. I'm not going to say his best football is still ahead of him, but there's a really good chance that the new regime can get the best out of Quinnen Williams and make him quite frankly, a perennial all-pro / Pro Bowl type player. So Quinnen, first and foremost, is the headliner of the group. Then we go down into the mostly good tier. Here you're going to find your 2 starting edge rushers, Jermaine Johnson the 2nd and Will McDonald the 4th. Obviously, I know Jermaine's coming off the Achilles from week 2 last year against the Titans. I still think he's a mostly good player. Do I think that's going to translate to him having 10, 12, 13 sacks in 2025? Maybe not. I don't think he's going to be fully healthy for the beginning portions of the season. Maybe it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks. He's not at 100%. The quicker he gets to 100%, obviously the chances would go up of him being closer to a 5, in my opinion. And maybe if he didn't get hurt, he would be one of those guys who you would consider putting in the 5 tier. But coming off the Achilles, had to put him at mostly good because the sample size is still good enough from Jermaine where I still think he can be an ascending player. Will McDonald coming off the 10.5 sack season. Obviously, this is going to be mostly good. He's on an upward trajectory with his talents. He only had 2.5 sacks in the last 10 games of the season, so it was a lot of early season production for him and then a late season dip. I do think because of Jermaine's injury, they're going to rely on him quite heavily, obviously. So to me, he's a mostly good player, even though he had, like I said, a bit of a hot start and then a slower finish to 2024. Still think he's mostly good. The next tier down, I have Derek Nottie, the defensive interior free agent from the Kansas City Chiefs. I have him in the good tier. I think when you look at the 2 in the green tier and then the 7 in the orange tier, Derek Nottie doesn't necessarily fit in either category to me. So I had to put him at 3. Right now, I would pencil him in as the starter alongside Quinnen Williams, but I don't know if they have trust in him to be a 3-down player or if he's just an early down rotational player. I don't think he holds up terribly great against the run. And, his pass rush production has been just okay in his career. So the Chiefs were willing to move off of him. And usually when the good teams move off of guys, there's a reason behind it, right? So Derek Nottie to me is just going to be average. He's just going to be good. Then you get into the below average or rookie tier. We do have one rookie on the list, Tyler Barron. Other than that, everybody else is a veteran. The youngest player after him is Leonard Taylor III, who's entering his second season coming off a UDFA rookie season. To me, Leonard Taylor, and this is not in an order of who I think is highest on the depth chart. These are just all the guys in the same bucket. So Michael Clemens to me is not better than Byron Cowart, right? That's not how I'm labeling them. This is just everybody in the 2 tier. So Clemens, Cowart, Rashad Weaver, another free agent signing, Tyler Barron, the rookie, Leonard Taylor III, Fedarian Mathis, a waiver claim from the Commanders, and then J2 Fele from the Bengals. These guys all end up in the below average tier. To me, like if one of these guys can stand out, and maybe even 2 of these guys can stand out, and you have a nice 6-man rotation on the defensive line, I think that's going to go a long way. Gone are the days, unfortunately, of having 6 to 8 really good defensive linemen who are good either against the run or the pass, and you're able to rotate them in and out. I really think that these guys aren't going to rotate as much with the new regime. So you're looking at a guy who's probably going to be 70% of the snaps as a starter. And then you have your rotational guys coming in to play 20 to 25% of the snaps. In my opinion, maybe things change once we get into the season and see how things progress with the depth players. So you have Clemens and Rashad Weaver are probably your top backup edge rushers, with Tyler Barron kind of mixing in and finding a role. And then your backup interior players are Byron Cowart, who seems to have had a really good spring and summer process for the Jets and is being talked about as that guy who's going to play alongside Quinnen Williams. So perhaps by the time we get to the season, Byron Cowart is closer to the good tier than the below average tier. Rashad Weaver, he had some flashes at OTAs. Again, no pads on at these practices, so it's hard to really get a glimpse of offense and defensive line production. Fedarian Mathis, again, he was a claim from the Commanders when Phil Savage was the interim GM. So after Joe Douglas and before Darren Muji came in, not too many high hopes for him. I thought at first there could be a role, but then they added so many bodies in free agency with the new regime that it didn't make a ton of sense that Fedarian was going to get first dibs at the spot next to Quinnen Williams. And then J2 Fele, I'm not really, least exposure out of this entire group. I know more about Tyler Barron from Miami than I do J2 Fele from the Bengals. So not really having a ton of high hopes for Tufele making the roster. The 6 guys in the red tier, you have Braden McGregor, Eric Watts, Fatorma Molba, the UDFA from West Virginia, Peyton Page, the UDFA from Clemson, Kingsley Jonathan, one of the more recent additions, and Jamarcus Weston, another UDFA from Florida. I don't think any of these guys really have a spot. I'll be completely honest. Maybe there's a guy who pops. I did a film breakdown of Fatorma Molba, and he showed why he's a UDFA. There's some flashes, but there's a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of negative plays on the film for Molba. So it's going to be tough for any of these guys to really crack the 53-man, in my opinion. Some of these guys could just be priority practice squad guys. If you can get McGregor and Watts back on the practice squad and you have them for your 3 in-season elevations, probably the best course of action for these guys. They're not necessarily the talent doesn't speak to them, making the 53, in my opinion. It was a great story last year, but it also went to show that the old regime blew up the defensive line, and we had to rely on a lot of 20 to 21-year-olds who weren't drafted to come in and play a role. So defensive line, a bit of a mixed bag, and it's a lot heavier at the top with those first three, in my opinion, and then you have a significant drop-off to the rest. If I had to guess, they're probably going to keep 10 defensive linemen. So one of those guys in the orange category is going to drop off. My best guess is that it's Tufele, and everybody from Fedarian Mathis up gets a shot at the 53, with Fedarian Mathis probably being the first one out once an addition is possibly made. Maybe a waiver claim comes in and they take that person over Fedarian Mathis. So I would say they keep 10 on the D-line for now. Moving into the linebacker category, this one, again, it's very top heavy. We know the guys at the top. Quincy Williams, already been an all-pro, very well could be an all-pro again with this system. There was a lot of questions on, do these guys even fit the defensive scheme that Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilks want to run? It seems like they want a lot bigger linebackers, maybe not necessarily the speed linebackers who go sideline to sideline, and that's what Quincy and Jamian are, in my opinion. Obviously, that's not the only thing they do. So Quincy Williams kind of needs a new contract, kind of one of those sleeper positions or sleeper players, in my opinion, where if the contract came, that'd be great. But if the contract doesn't come, probably not too surprised either if they allow themselves to, replace Quincy and get a comp pick for him in free agency. But Quincy is in the 5 category. I think he can have a really big year. Jamian Sherwood, coming off the big contract extension, 3 years, $45 million. He's in the mostly good. I understand it's been a long grind for him. He had the injury in year 1 against the Panthers where he tried to struggle through it, and I believe it was an ACL tear. And that was all in the middle of switching positions. So for him to get that $45 million deal over 3 seasons is just a huge step in his progress, and it just shows how much of a hard worker he is. Still think he's mostly good. Could he potentially get a Pro Bowl nod? Sure. I don't see it, though. Maybe a Pro Bowl alternate at best, in my opinion, would be Jamian Sherwood's best course of action for the personal accolades side of it. In terms of the defense, I think he's going to be the guy who commands the green dot at first. He's going to be the communicator in Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilks' defense. So high hopes for Jamian Sherwood coming off the big contract. In the next tier below, we have Jamin Davis, Zaire Barnes, and rookie Francisco Malinois from Miami. I don't know. This is such a mixed bag, right? We don't have a ton of exposure on Zaire Barnes, but I didn't want to make him an unknown because at this point, we know what he is. He's below average. We haven't fully seen a great sample size of work for Barnes to really hang our hat on anything else. So if it wasn't going to be an unknown, it was going to be a 2 at best for him. Jamin Davis, can he come in and be the linebacker 3 when you go to your base defense, your base 4-3 package, and you have your 3 linebackers out there? Can Jamin Davis be the 3rd guy? He was another one of the free agent waiver claims during the Phil Savage interim era. So him and Fedarian Mathis, both ex-Commanders, which I think is kind of cool. And then you have Francisco Malinois. Again, complete unknown. I'm not going to put him as a 1 because of my rookie scale. Putting them at a 2, I feel like it's rude to just put a rookie at 1. Although he is unknown, you have to just assume that he's going to be a 2 or more for your team. So Malinois is the last of the 2 category. And then you have 5 guys in the 1 category. Marcelino McCrary-Ball, who has showed flashes. He had some good PFF numbers to back it up, but a very, very small sample size of that. Jackson Sermon, Aaron Smith, Jimmy Charlo, and Jared Bartlett. I believe Smith and Bartlett are the 2 UDFAs from this season, or this past draft, excuse me. And Charlo and Sermon have been here for a year or 2 each, but again, only really ever see these guys in August, and then you never hear about them again, and sometimes they come back to the practice squad. And that's really what those 5 are. I see a comment in the chat here from Alan. Shout out to you, Alan. Jets have no depth at D-line or D-tackle. The D-line depth, I could argue, is a little bit better, and you have more room for optimism. But the linebackers, absolutely. If one of these top guys gets hurt, Quincy or Jamian, I feel like it's going to be a really big drop off to Davis, Barnes, and Maui Noah. So definitely not too optimistic about the depth at linebacker. Defensive tackle, I think the coaching staff is a little bit higher than the Jets, or the Jets fan base, I should say, are on these players like Cowart and Leonard Taylor, maybe even Fedarian Mathis. I think the coaching staff is a little bit higher on one of those three guys, for better or worse, right? It's kind of the Justin Fields conversation. Fans don't necessarily have to agree with it. My biggest take is if the coaches see something in that player, I'm willing to give them a little bit of cushion to find that something in the player before just ruling them all out. But it's understandable that fans want to just throw out all the depth players or lack of depth players. That's definitely an argument to be made there. So that's the linebacker position. Again, top heavy, and then it drops off really quickly. Moving on to the cornerback position. As you see, there's two blue guys in this category. And in my opinion, I think eventually there will be a third in AZ Thomas joining that blue category. Maybe that's just me with the hopium of our third round pick being a really good press man corner. But Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter II, it's really hard to argue, and I'll debate with somebody if they don't think Michael Carter's an all-pro player. Michael Carter, they made a slot position right at the all-pro selections process by the Associated Press. They added a slot position, and my bells went off immediately. I said, okay, this is going to be Michael Carter in 2024. He's a top 3, top 5 nickel at worst, in my opinion. And his loss was really, felt last year. The communication dropped off. Obviously, the coverage dropped off. So Michael Carter, to me, is certainly deserving of being in that all-pro to Pro Bowl tier, even though he has not gotten it yet. Sauce, come on, 2-time all-pro, had a down year, was a bit of a stinker in the tackling department, but also we can all probably assume he's going to be better in this year than he was in his previous season, probably more towards the 2022, 2023 version of himself. That's at least my hope for him, whether he gets the contract or not. We know he's playing for the contract. So Sauce is definitely going to have his motivations to get back to that all-pro form, and I think he can do it with AG and Steve Wilks. So those are the 2 5-tier players. We don't have any 4-tier players in this group, and rightfully so, because I think Brandon Stephens is considered a 3. He's just good. Now, if he showed the ability to finish plays in Baltimore and never ended up as a free agent, and the Jets obviously never get him, perhaps that's because he's a 4 and he's mostly good. But the Ravens didn't really love what they got out of him last year. Now I believe they have Jair Alexander replacing him on the boundary. So Brandon Stephens, to me, is going to be in the good category until proven otherwise. If you weren't here for the offensive rankings either, I did have to put the caveat that I am going very conservative with a lot of these rankings. There might only be like 1 to 2 players on this entire roster that I feel differently about than maybe the consensus, and you'll see that reflected obviously with Michael Carter II being in the 5 tier, but I'm going very conservative with a lot of these grades. So Stephens to me is a 3. Isaiah Oliver is also a 3. A bit of familiarity with the system. Obviously, he was, brought in by the last regime because of his familiarity with their scheme. Steve Wilks was the defensive coordinator in San Francisco. I believe Oliver was there for one of the years. I could be mistaken on that. I still think Oliver is a good backup for what his role is. Now, if Isaiah Oliver was your starting nickel, I don't love that, like whatsoever. He'd probably be a 2 at best, right? So for what his role is, I think he is a good backup nickel. So I had to put him in there with Brandon Stephens in the 3 tier. Now we get to the 2 tier, which is Azariah Thomas, I think he's only a 2 because he's a rookie. If this was up to me and like I was trying to, go against the grain with my own grading scale, he'd probably start out as a 3. I'm very high on AZ Thomas. I think he's going to come in and prove that he should be the starter before midway point of the season, whether Brandon Stevens is playing good or not. I think Brandon Stevens would probably have to be playing at a potential Pro Bowl level, really, to stop AZ from coming out onto the field. I just think AZ is that much more of a talent. And then you combine the upside. Obviously, you're paying Brandon Stevens a lot of money at the $12 million per season on the 3-year deal that he got. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to force feed him reps, right? If it's even close, I would consider putting AZ in over Brandon Stevens in most situations. If you have a team, for instance, we play the Bengals. Obviously, they have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. If you want your 2 best press man corners out on the field, I believe that's a week 9 game. It's right in the middle of the season, right? That might be a game where you go to AZ Thomas instead of Brandon Stevens. So definitely going to be interesting to watch how AZ's rookie season unfolds and how quickly he is able to get on the field over Stevens or over somebody else. Perhaps they want to do something creative and put him in the slot and they have Michael Carter in like a dime package, and then you bring in AZ Thomas as your 4th corner. So they could definitely get creative with AZ, and I think he'll be in a higher tier very quickly, in my opinion. Then you have 2 guys in the unknown to developmental category. I don't know if either of these guys are going to make the roster, and those guys are Quantez Stiggers and Jarek Bernard-Converse. We have only seen bits and pieces of these guys in the preseason, and they've each done a good amount of, good things, we should say, for the Jets in preseason talk, of course. Again, is it going to be enough to crack the 53-man roster where they might only keep 5 corners? I don't think so. One of these guys might end up back on the practice squad. I don't think Jarek Bernard-Converse can go back and forth between safety and corner and still have a spot on this team, in my opinion. So if one of these guys makes it to the practice squad, I think that would be the most likely path for them. Before I get into the next category here, I want to pop up Indy's chat here. Indy Jet says, hit the like and share. I appreciate that. I don't have this episode on subscriber only. I did with the last one. I'm still trying to get to 500. I believe I'm around 20 subscribers short of 500, and then we can get the super chats and memberships going. So definitely hit the like, hit the subscribe button. I genuinely appreciate all the great people who have subscribed and really created this community here. I'm very thankful for you guys. Moving into the safety position, this one, again, it's tough. You don't really have that top line guy. I know Cisco was a big signing in free agency for his $8 to $10 million 1-year deal that he got. So Cisco to me is the top guy. He's a 3. It's hard to say he's mostly good. I understand his 2022 and 2023 seasons were better than 2024. And there was a lot of reasons in Jacksonville why things got off the rails, quite like the Jets, whether it was coaching, scheme, talent or lack of talent, just not putting everybody in the best situations to win football games consistently. A lot was going on in Jacksonville. So Andre Cisco comes over, New York native. Got to keep him at a 3, though, until we see a little bit more of that old form from 2022, 2023. And then I'd be very happy to bump him up into the mostly good. So although he is starting level caliber, you can see across that top line, he is easily the worst starter on this defense. And that's not to say he's going to be a huge liability. Maybe the safety position as a whole is a huge liability because of the depth or lack thereof. But Cisco, I think, will keep their head above water to a degree and actually hold down one of the starting safety spots. Now it gets a little interesting. My 2 category is Tony Adams and Malachi Moore, the rookie from Alabama. I know I said I didn't list this in order, and it's not in order. I would put Malachi Moore above Tony Adams on the depth chart today without having seen Malachi Moore technically put the pads on for the green and white. I would just throw him out into the fire. I don't know how Tony Adams, quite frankly, is even on this roster currently. To go from having the owner personally ask for you to be benched to still on this team in July the following year is just truly crazy to me, right? So we've come a long way with Tony Adams, and not to say his progression has come a long way. I think he's kind of showed you what he is. Pretty meh in coverage. Probably going to take one of the worst angles to the ball carrier that you'll ever see now that Ashton Davis is not on this team. And I love Ashton Davis. He's a great guy, but between him and Adams, the angles in the run game were truly putrid and allowed for a lot more explosive gains than necessary in the last couple seasons. So Tony Adams, to me, he's penciled in as the starter, but Malachi Moore is in a situation like AZ Thomas. How quickly is he going to prove that he's better than the guy ahead of him, and you can't keep him on the bench anymore? In my opinion, I think within the first 2 or 3 seasons of Malachi Moore's career, you're going to see the green dot go from Jamie Sherwood to Malachi Moore. I think he's going to be the communicator of the defense. He's going to get the play calls into his helmet. Brian Branch is that guy in Detroit who AG used to rely on as the communicator. So I really think that before long, Malachi Moore is going to have the green dot and be the communicator, be the focal point of the secondary in terms of getting everybody aligned. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit for him to learn the NFL as a whole, really, how to play it, how to communicate through it, how to go through each practice week and prep week and really be a professional. And then the talent on the field is just going to take over from there, in my opinion, with Moore. Then in the red bucket, you have Jordan Clark, son of Ryan Clark, former Pittsburgh DB. Jarius Monroe, the second-year player from Tulane, I believe it is. Dean Clark, another safety, UDFA, and then Jalen Simpson, who is another holdover from last year. It's tough. Do they keep 4 and maybe one of the Clarks stick on? If I had to guess, I would put my flag on Jarius Monroe just because he's a second-year player. I really liked him in the draft process. I was glad when the Jets signed him as a UDFA. Again, me liking him doesn't make him make the team, right? So one of those 4 guys is going to have to step up because you can't go into the season with just 3 safeties. A lot of teams play big nickel, which is 3 safeties on the field at times. So you can't just go in there with 3 guys. I think there's going to be at least a 4th guy who makes it. Perhaps it's a waiver addition on August 26th when teams go from 90 men to 53. But right now, I would say it's either going to be Jordan Clark or Jarius Monroe at the safety position. And then you get into special teams, and quite frankly, it's a hide your eyes type of situation, right? The special teams unit is full of unknowns, full of no names, full of people that are supposed to be kicking the ball professionally who have never kicked a ball professionally, whether it's Harrison Mevis, Caden Davis, the 2 kickers, or Austin McNamara and Kai Kroger, the 2 punters. None of these guys have ever kicked in a professional game setting before. So that being said, they all get 1s. They're all unknown until proven otherwise. Can't even put them as a below average. And whoever wins the competition, they're going to remain a 1, in my opinion, until they at least show me something to move up. That being said, I didn't want to put all 1s in the special teams category and just really poo-poo on the special teams, although I do think it's a very bad unit all around. Thomas Hennessy, longest tenured player, I believe, alongside Quinnen Williams. He was here since the McCagnon era, which is just absolutely crazy to think about. Thomas Hennessy gets a 3. He's a good long snapper, right? He's very consistent. He doesn't miss games, doesn't get injured. So very thankful to have Thomas Hennessy in this grouping to kind of lift the grade up completely. And then I threw 2 guys in there in the special teams bucket that, although they play other positions technically on paper, they don't. They don't play their natural positions. Kine Nwangu, he is a running back, but he is only a return man, in my opinion. If he gets 1 carry on the season as a running back, I would be surprised, truthfully. So he gets put into the special teams bucket. I put him as a 3. Perhaps the return against the Seahawks is factoring a little too much into my formula here for Nwangu, but I do think he is a better returner than Xavier Gibson. So Xavier Gibson doesn't show up in this category because he has a role as a wide receiver on offense, or has had a role as wide receiver on the offense. Nwangu hasn't. So he's a special teams only guy in my opinion, but he still gets a 3. And then Chris Boyd, the free agent from the Texans, he's just going to be a gunner. They have him listed as cornerback, but he's not playing corner. Let's be honest. The dude wears, I think, number 17 in Houston. Like, there was no shot he was ever going to play cornerback for the Jets when they signed him. He was a special teams only guy, a Chris Banjo guy only. And those guys, they're important to the roster, right? So Chris Boyd, although he'll never play defense, he will probably be your main contributor on special teams as a gunner. So those guys both get 3s, in my opinion. That's going to wrap up the ranking portion where I put them in the buckets. This next slide is going to show the breakdown of rankings positionally. I took the top guys, so I believe I eliminated the red category guys in all the position groups except for special teams, and I found an aggregate number, their average number, and that goes into this ranking here, 1 through 5. And this is going to go into the total team rankings. A couple weeks ago, I did my positional power rankings, which was completely subjective. And now this is putting the grades on the players, putting the numbers on the grades, and really averaging out each position. No surprise, there's 2 blue guys in the 5 tier at cornerback. So that's going to prop up the entire unit. They get a 3.6. They're the top unit by a large margin, as you can see, from the linebackers. Linebackers come in at the second highest position with a 3 average grade. Obviously, having 2 really good guys at the top and then a big dip to the depth players. Like, if you had even 1 depth player who was average, right, or 2 guys who were average as depth linebackers, this might contend for the top position on the entire defensive side of the ball. Unfortunately, cornerback, in my opinion, is still the strong point. That's going to be the main focal point of the defense. So linebacker comes in at 2 at a 3.0 grade. Defensive line comes in 3rd at a 2.88 grade. A lot of this has to do with the volume, right? We saw how many guys were in the 2 bucket. Again, if some of those guys were in the 3s, then this unit is up above a 3 average, and they're probably the second best unit on the defense, right? But because of the lack of depth, that really hurt them in this ranking. So they're down in the middle at 3rd position with a 2.88 average. Bringing up the rear on the defensive side of the ball is safety with a 2.0. So you see just a huge drop off from defensive line to safety, almost an entire point average difference from D-line to safety. And again, it's everything we talked about. Cisco being the top guy as a 3, the 2 guys behind him being 2s, and everybody else just being a 1 and a complete unknown really hurt the safety position. So even if you are optimistic on guys like Cisco and Malachi Moore, like I am, it's going to be tough for these guys to really get higher in the rankings based off their grading system. And then obviously bringing up the rear is special teams, because they're completely unknown. And I'm not going to say they're trash just because they're unknown, but if special teams cost the Jets a couple games this season, I don't think many people will be surprised. If Mevis or Davis misses a game-tying or game-winning field goal late in the 4th quarter of a ball game, we're going to know why he missed it, right? He's just way too inexperienced. And that's not making excuses for these guys. You want to have a good special teams, obviously a good special teams unit, but we know what the Jets are doing. They're in a bit of a retool in 2025. So if they're going to overlook special teams for 1 year, my hope is that if none of these guys really ball out, that special teams is getting a complete overhaul in 2026. And that could very well be the case, right? They were just spending $5 to $6 million on Zerline and Morstead combined. So to get all these guys in here on very minimal deals, you're probably looking at paying 2.5 for the entire special teams unit. So somebody had to come in last. Unfortunately, it was the special teams unit. Now, this is the entire breakdown. So Positions 1 through 10 on the entire offense and defense, including special teams. We'll go from the bottom up. Special teams comes in at number 10. Again, somebody had to be last. You probably would want it to be your special teams over any other position, just in my personal opinion. Safety comes in at number 9. Tight end at number 8. Wide receiver at number 7, which I believe it's actually a tie with quarterback. So quarterback would be number 7. Wide receiver would be number 6. I had the math wrong on this graphic. So quarterback 7, wide receiver 6, and then your top 5 are defensive line, linebacker, offensive line, running back, and cornerback. Now, a couple weeks ago when I did my subjective positional power rankings with just basically how I feel about each of these guys without putting a grade to it, I came up with my own system. I ranked all of them, and my top 5 were the same. So between my subjective power rankings and actually putting it to the test of the numbers, the top 5 all come out the same. I was a little bit lower on quarterback than the rankings say. This is number 7. I know the graphic is wrong, but I had them at 8. So tight end graded out better during this process than safety did. So those were also flipped. So realistically, you're talking about a 2-position flip between my subjective rankings and what the numbers are actually telling me. So I was pretty close, right? I had 2 positions off. The top 5 was all the same. So we know what the strengths of this team are, and we know what the weaknesses are. I think that's probably the easiest way to say it. We know who's going to do well for the most part. We know who the surprises would be. Like if Justin Fields pops off, that would be a surprise to a lot of people. Some people love Justin Fields and they think he's going to be great. Me, I don't think the safeties are going to be great, but I think there's a case for Cisco to pop back into form before the 2024 season, and Malachi Moore can definitely exceed expectations. So this is just a rough baseline rankings for all the guys. I'm going to put this into a 53-man ranking as we get closer to preseason. With that, I'll open up for some of your questions in the chat. I see a lot of great content in here. Rich was a little late, but happy we could get you in here, Rich. Boomtown shouting out. Dylan's live. Let's go. Yes, absolutely. I am live midday. And I'm only going live midday. I'll be completely honest. I was going to go live at 6 p.m. after Jake's PM show, but it's just such a nice day out. So I'm going to try to get this out of the way, and then I'm going to go golfing for a little bit. And I didn't want to be late to the 6 p.m. start if I started golfing at like 2 o'clock. So I'm doing the live show first, and then I'm going to go play golf, and then maybe I'll record one more show later tonight. So definitely trying to prioritize this nice weather and getting out this great content. So with that, I'll take up your questions, scroll through back up into the chat here. I know I saw a couple before that I missed. Alan again says, Tony Adams isn't a starter on any team in this league besides the Jets. Alan, what if I told you the Jets safety room was not the worst in the division? Maybe because they added Minkah Fitzpatrick, it's better than the Jets now, but the Dolphins were hurting. They were about to start Ashton Davis and somebody else really bad at safety. So they kind of saved themselves with the Minkah trade, but I don't even think the Bills safeties are that great. I believe it's Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop. So maybe the Jets aren't the worst safety group in the world. And Tony Adams might actually have a job if he left. I'm not saying I would advocate for it. I think, like I said, when your owner tells you that they want you benched and you somehow still make it on the team, it's going to be an incredibly uphill battle, in my opinion, to stay. But Tony Adams penciled in starter right now, for better or worse. Papa Jet, shout out to you, Papa. You're an amazing listener. I love all your calls on Jake's show. You're always very kind. When will you start taking call-ins on the show? This is a tough one. I got this question last week. I said it's going to be a long time. I think I need to build up my community first and be able to control the stream quite like Jake and Boy Green do. They do such a good job of navigating all the callers and really producing a great show because of their radio backgrounds. I don't have that skill set. It's very hard for me to even read the chat, do what I'm doing over here, and still try to talk to you guys. So I'm still ironing out the kinks. I think at most for the first couple months of the channel, I'm going to do call-ins after Jets games, and it's still going to be limited. Like 3 callers at most post game, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I'm not one who can control the room. So it's going to be a work in progress with the call-ins, and maybe it's going to be very, very selective at first. And that's not to, poo-poo on anybody who calls in. I think it's just going to be a strictly Jets talking point only for at least the first couple months until I work my way through it. We haven't even gotten into the season yet. I don't know what the in-season schedule is going to look like. So that's definitely going to be a work in progress, Papa, but I'll definitely keep that in mind. And I will certainly have you as a caller because you are always great. And I want to hear more classic rock suggestions. Rich in the chat says golf is hard. Yeah, golf is really hard. I was finally able to swing my golf clubs for the first time in a month since the car accident. Today is 1 month since the car accident. So happy to be able to swing my golf clubs yesterday. We'll see. I'm only going to play 9 holes today. So we're going to play it slow and see how it goes. Try not to outdrive anything and go crazy and disrupt any of this because I'm still a little sore in my ribs, but it's mostly just the follow through. So we'll see how golf goes, but definitely a hard game. Bill M, subscribe, people. Only 21 away from 500. That's all we need, 21? All right, we got to get a couple of those from this stream here. Hopefully we're a lot closer to 500 when we're done here. NYJ Atlantic Flight Podcast. Shout out to you, Gus. Love you, brother. Ozzy Osbourne and Sabbath. Yeah, they just performed their final live show this past weekend. It was kind of, obviously it's a bittersweet thing, and I wasn't there obviously for the first couple decades of their career, but they've been around my entire life, my entire 30 years. So to see that last night was really cool. All the rock legends that came out and supported, that was a great thing too. It was honestly a little sad. I don't think Ozzy could get out of the chair, which it's tough, right? When those guys get old and they start declining, you can really see it. You're visibly watching them decline. So it was a little tough. There was definitely moments where Ozzy wanted to get out of the chair and really get going with the crowd. So it was a tough scene, but glad that they did it right. They went out with a bang. The only way they could do it, playing some of their greatest, like Paranoid, Iron Man. That was a lot of fun to see. Paganardi in the chat, DT Live. I love it, right? Happy you guys can make it in. Gus again saying I'm awesome. You're awesome too, brother. I really appreciate that. Alan with a B+ performance grade. Wow. That's quite high for Alan. I'm surprised. I appreciate it. We didn't have to talk about your guy, YA Black. I said it right this time on stream. Got it on recording. It's there forever. YA Black. We don't have to talk about him, but we will talk about him in our week 1 preview because he is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Oscar the Grouch. Let's go, Dylan. We're fired up. I appreciate it, Oscar. Always happy to have you in here chatting with us. Papa says, I mostly agree with your grades. I might have the linebackers and D-line flipped and also the running back and cornerback, but that's basically trying to pick the flat shit out of the pepper. Yeah, I mean, to me, cornerback is far and away the best position group on this team. Sauce Gardner is probably my top ranked player, if I'm being honest, and I'm not spoiling any rankings. Sauce is going to be in the top 3 of just about every fan's list, whether it's Garrett, Quinnen, Sauce, in some kind of combination of those 3, I think are still the top guys. So corner is going to go a long way. It's more Michael Carter versus Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. And to me, Michael Carter is just the superior player. We haven't seen enough of Allen and Davis for me to say it, but I do think the running back room, they're number 2 on the list. So they're definitely going to have a predominant role, run a heavy team, and really be the focal point of this offense, at least to start until we realize what Justin Fields is really going to be in this passing offense. Gangrene 365, shout out to you. He says, golf, it's raining. What state are you in again? I am in the lovely state of South Carolina. It rains here for like 25 minutes and then the sun comes back out and you're sweating again. if it rains at all. We had some kind of shitty rain back in like April, early May, where it was just constantly raining like 3 days a week, all damn day. But yeah, I walk out of my house at 6 o'clock to go to work and it's already 82 degrees. So definitely going to try to take advantage of that and get out there and swing my clubs today. Let's see. Chris B, please like, support, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. Dylan Tereman deserves it. Chris B, you are awesome. I appreciate all of your optimism on everybody's show and all of the kind words. Pagan Artie, yeah, 25 away from 500. That was quick. I thought it, honestly, man, I honestly thought this YouTube thing was going to be a breeze. I can't lie. I got 90 something subscribers in the first day, and I made my channel in May. So we're already past the draft. We're past all the important milestones of the offseason, so to speak. And I got 90 something in my first day. So I remember joking. I think I was joking around with Buffalo Jet fan who has like 12 to 15,000 subscribers. And I was like, dude, I'm going to catch you real quick. And then we kind of plateaued in the 400s, but we're getting there. I think by the season, we should easily be able to hit 500. My goal is 1,000 by the Steelers game. And I think, if there's a lot of positive news to talk about in this late July, August period, I think that number will climb very quickly. All right, let's see. Any other questions? Boomtown, ever golf in Santee, South Carolina? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know where that is geographically compared to where I am in Spartanburg, but Spartanburg is the upstate. So I'm 30 minutes south of the border of North Carolina, and I'm about 45 minutes to an hour from the western border of South Carolina, which I think borders Tennessee. I don't know. I need a damn US map to help me out here on that one. But no, I don't. I've never golfed in Santee. I've only golfed in Spartanburg and one course I played in Greenville, South Carolina. So if Santee's close, I mean, like within an hour, I'll drive and play golf. I don't care. So if Santee is close, I'll play. Now, if it's close to Myrtle Beach, that's like a 4+ hour drive to get to the coast. So that's probably not in my realm. Like Hilton Head would be a great course for me to go play if I was ever good enough to not divot the hell out of their fairways. All right, let's see what else we got. Any more chats here? Yeah, there's Boomtown. How about golfing in Hilton Head? Yeah, that's a bucket list thing. That's going to be like I call up all the boys and I have them fly down here and we all play golf at Hilton Head because that'd be fun, those championship level courses. Let's see. A lot of Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head talk. Gangrene says we got to get more Asmaniacs over to the channel. I think it's quite amazing how quickly the Asmaniacs flock, right? I have 480 something subscribers. I wouldn't hesitate to say 460 plus of them are Asmaniacs and watchers of Jake's show. So I'm greatly appreciative of my weekly spot on Jake's show, and it really has gone a long way towards helping my channel grow. Alan says, assume you're near Rock Hill. So we're just, I guess, doxing myself today. I'm about 40 minutes away from Rock Hill. I'm a little bit west of Rock Hill, but yeah, we're close to Rock Hill. All right, let's see. Chris B, thoughts about Wilks, Aaron Glenn's defensive philosophy, approach, scheme, style, blitzing. Hopefully Quincy and others blitzing produces sacks, tackles for loss, physical flying across the field. Yeah, that to me is what I think of when I think of Steve Wilks and Aaron Glenn, especially Aaron Glenn. He's going to have 5-6 man pressures and blitzes worked up where your linebackers and guys from the second level, whether it's a slot corner coming on a cat blitz, or you have Quincy Williams pressuring up the A or B gap. So that would be my immediate thoughts on their philosophy. Now, Steve Wilks kind of runs more of what Robert Saleh ran, right? And that's why he was the DC in San Francisco when Saleh came to New York, right? And they made it to the Super Bowl. They didn't win it, but they made it to the Super Bowl. And then he kind of got scapegoated by Shanahan and they fired him as DC. So there's going to be a blend. Like there's going to be a lot of four-man rushes with just four down defenders. There's going to be, a handful of 5 or 6 man pressures and blitzes. I don't think it's going to be crazy exotic like Wink Martindale or anything like that, but I do think we're going to get more speed, more physicality, from the first and second levels of this defense. So yeah, I agree, Chris. I think it's going to be more of a blitzing style more than anything else. And that's just going to put a lot of pressure on your corners. But that's where Sauce and AZ and Michael Carter, even Brandon Stevens to a degree, those guys are going to really step up and show their worth and be the reason why the defense is as good as it can be, in my opinion. I think that's going to be the unit that we go as they go. Alan in here, I got to put a Lenora Sellers chat up whenever it comes in. Yes, I did the Lenora Sellers breakdown. That's on the channel. I did the Cade Klubnik one. That's also on the channel. I dropped that 2 days ago. And my first members only video is going to be a Cade Klubnik versus Lenora Sellers Palmetto duel of quarterbacks. And I already have everything kind of planned out for that once I hit the 500 mark. And I'm going to go through trait by trait. I pick 10 traits from each position when I'm scouting guys in the draft, the most 10, I guess, relevant traits to each position. And I'm going to break down Klubnik versus Sellers and where each one has the advantage over the other. My hope, and the tickets are a little expensive right now, I think they're like $210. My hope is to get to the Palmetto Bowl against Clemson and South Carolina. I know it's in Columbia this year. It's not in Clemson. So it's about a 50-minute drive. Either way, 50 minutes to Clemson, about an hour or so to Columbia. So I'm really hoping to get to the Palmetto Bowl. But yeah, Sellers would be somebody in person that I feel like I need to go see up close and in person because he's just such a special talent. Unfairly, and this is no shot at Kyle Clifton. I love Kyle. He mentioned that I compared Lenora Sellers to Cam Newton, and I did, right? But it was just one play of the 12 plays that I showed. It was just a toughness scramble where he broke 3 tackles, and it looked very Cam Newton-esque. Cam Newton was one of the best college football players, not just quarterbacks, but players of my 30 years on this earth. So I could never compare Sellers to Cam Newton, at least right now. But yes, that one play did remind me of Cam Newton with his toughness when it came to being a runner. Pagan Artie, Manning not coming out right. I would, if I had to bet money, I would say no. Percentage-wise, I think it's probably an 80 to 85% chance he stays in college. I feel like that's been the Manning, way, right? They're going to take the most of their college, really develop into players and be NFL-ready caliber prospects. And that's not to say Arch isn't NFL-ready, but I just don't think it would be the best course of action for him, right? With the NIL deals and everything coming in, it's hard to justify, oh, well, you got to go and, provide for your family by getting the NFL money. A lot of these guys are doing that at college, right? Like Lenora Sellers just turned down an $8 million multi-year NIL deal to stay with the Gamecocks. So I would say right now, Manning probably not coming out. To Gus's point here, Manning will come out if the right team is there. Maybe, but that's so many things would have to align for Arch Manning. One, you have to be in love with a really bad team, right? I feel like that's the first and foremost thing. If there's a team like, I know the Titans just took Cam Ward number 1. The Patriots, they have Drake May. I'm trying to think of teams. The Browns, right? They're kind of going through it with Deshaun Watson. They have Shadur Sanders, who is a 5th-round pick. But if they end up at the top of the draft, Arch Manning would have to love the Browns to want to come out and be the first overall pick. So I think it's just a dicey situation where he's able to control his own narrative by staying in college one more year, being the QB1 of the 2027 class, and then going from there, because there are plenty of NFL-ready traits that he possesses, but he's only played a handful of college games, not even college starts. I know Quinn Ewers was banged up a little bit, but I feel like he came in a lot in spot duty. So definitely tough. Last quarterback question here, another draft one from Alan. I'm excited to see DJ Lagway live this year. That's the Gators quarterback, or he was with the Gators last year. I don't know. With all the transfers, it's so hard. I put a guy into my prospect database at the end of the college football season, and then by the beginning of next college football season, I have to update where they're playing. So I believe he's the Florida Gators guy. He's another one. Trevor Sikkema of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast with Connor Rogers, he tweeted at me about DJ Lagway being the pseudo answer for the Jets in a couple seasons. And I don't know. I'm a little weary on Florida Gator players overall, just because the Jets have been burned by them, obviously. But that's not to say Lagway is going to be a bad NFL pro. And if the Jets had him, that he's just going to suck. So I will add Lagway to my list of quarterbacks. I just started watching Drew Aller. So I'm through Sellers. I'm through Klubnik. I have Drew Aller and Garrett Nussmeier left of the top 4. And then I will go into DJ Lagway if we have time before preseason starts. This will be the last one. Last question of the chat. We're about at the hour mark, and I'm trying to keep them around an hour streams. So again, appreciate everybody tuning in. Bill M says, has the Stevens going to safety chat simmered down, or is that still a possibility? I think it's always a possibility, right? I mean, we'll see what happens when these guys get into camp and what really happens when the pads come on. But it's always a possibility, in my opinion. I mean, whether it's him playing poorly and the safety's not really stepping up outside of Cisco, say Malachi Moore's not ready to take over a starting spot at safety, but he's an okay rotational player. And then you have AZ Thomas, who's really popping off at practice, and Brandon Stevens is currently occupying his spot. Maybe you can move Stevens back to safety in the meantime while Malachi Moore is still adjusting, and then you have AZ Thomas as your boundary corner. So I'm not going to say it's dead. It hasn't been talked about a lot, but I'm not going to say it's dead, because once you start playing football games and shit hits the fan, you're going to have to adjust on the fly and make all the best moves for your defensive unit as you can. Alan saying the Browns have 2 top 10 picks. Yeah, that's going to go a long way, right? Them, and I believe the Rams have 2 first-round picks. So somebody's going to get a really good quarterback at the end of this season and the beginning of next draft. So really excited. Last one. Got to have Papa in here as the final one. Awesome job, DT. Love your content. Thank you, Papa. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody tuning in. We're just about at that hour mark. Oscar sneaking one in at the buzzer. All right, we got it. And it's slightly controversial, so it's even better. He's aware of the controversial take that he has, but seeing how desperate the Jets are at wide receiver, would you take a swing on signing Isaiah Bond from Texas? Did we ever figure out the fallout, I guess, from that? I don't want to say criminal background, but his legal background. I don't know if we ever got a solution or a conclusion to that story. Perhaps. I was a huge Bond guy. I was like, if you're going to take, now I'm blanking on the other guy's name, but if you're going to take, Matthew Golden in the first round, but you could potentially get Isaiah Bond in the 3rd or 4th round, I feel like I love the value of Bond more. And then all that came out about his legal concerns, and I've kind of wiped all those players clean from my rankings when that happens. But hey, there's guys that have done a lot worse in the NFL that are still currently playing. So whether it's an allegation or if it's something that was fully came to light that he was guilty of, I'm not aware. But yeah, man, I mean, we have enough kind of to worry about at wide receiver. Like, is Corley going to make the roster? How many are they going to keep? So maybe adding Isaiah Bond doesn't really help unless you get rid of Lazard and Corley. But always a possibility that they're going to look to add somebody come August once the pads come on and shit hits the fan. So we'll end it on that one. I appreciate everybody once again for tuning in. I'm going to try to be more consistent. I'm going to do Monday streams until Buffalo and I get back on our normal Monday routine. I'm not quite sure. Whenever he hits me up and says we're going back on Mondays, he and I are going to do the Monday night streams. But whenever I have time on an early day after work, I'm going to try to hop in and get a live stream in, whether it's an hour, whether it's 25 to 30 minutes. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Hit the like button on the way out. Hit the subscribe button. We're close to 500. I'm going to look at the number. It's close. We got to be close to 500. Maybe we didn't get all 20 this stream, but we definitely got a couple. So appreciate it. Till next time. Next week, we're going over AFC rankings. We're going to start putting the Jets up against the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Patriots, see where they stand in this division. Do they even have a chance? So that's coming next week. Continuing our summer ranking series. Appreciate everybody. And until next time, let's go Jets.